Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the official Ronnie Landis podcast show. Of course, like always, I am your host, Ronnie Landis, and I am also the founder of the Holistic Health Mastery Certification course, which is an all-encompassing holistic health, holistic nutrition, natural lifestyle certification educational course. And you can find more information about that at holistichealthmastery.com. And let's get on with today's show. Wow. Oh, wow. Wow. How do I start this show? This is really... I'm trying to find a word other than incredible because I feel like I've played that word out so many times in previous introductions. But this was an incredible interview, to say the least. William Kleidon is, how do you categorize such a human being? He's a genius. I mean, he is a bona fide, certified genius of the highest order. And I have to say, when I first met this individual, I want to say about a year ago, maybe. No, actually, it was about almost 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. I met him in Rawvolution, which was a very famous raw food cafe / restaurant in Venice, California. And I remember the moment I met this guy, and I had some sneaking judgments, not overbearing judgments, but just little things that we have sometimes when we see somebody that might be dressed a certain way or might carry themselves a certain way, or we think, oh, wow, that person is a little too happy. They must be on some substances or something. Whatever the judgments that we carry, within the first 1 minute of talking to this individual, I realized very quickly, wow, my judgments are actually really far off, and this human being is actually a genius. And from that moment on, I was just captivated in a way that I wanted to know everything that this guy knew. There was a level of, if I want to say, articulation, the ability to coherently put together very diverse and somewhat complicated information ideas into a very well articulated streamline of information and communication. I was actually really blown away. And then ever since then, him and me have connected, collaborated, had some unbelievable conversations surrounding the future of nutrition, the future of health. And he's taken an interest in my work as a nutrition specialist and a health educator. And I've taken a big interest in his work because it is my estimation that he could very well be the world's leading expert on everything that has to do with hemp, that has to do with cannabis, that has to do with CBD oil, which is a huge topic and a topic that we have never even attempted to tackle on this show before. But just to give a little context for this interview, I bumped into William here in Kauai, actually. A couple of days before we recorded this, I didn't set up a schedule with him to record or anything, but we bumped into each other and we ended up hanging out all day long and literally having, like a 3 or 4 hour conversation on biochemistry, on nutrition, on the future of human health, and as it pertains to some of the things that I've been really interested in and the connection between CBD. And that's really where William is an expert because he helped co-found an incredible company coming out of Ojai, California called Ojai Organics, which specializes in a very highly absorbable, a highly deliverable method of, just delivering high potency CBD oil into the human body. And there's a lot I could say about it because, like I said, I've known this guy for a while and I've seen the work that he's been doing. But when I saw him in Kauai and after our conversation, I said, hey, man, you got to come over to the house. We need to sit down and we need to record this conversation because the world needs to hear what you have to say. And I am just so elated that I finally get to release this interview and share it with all of you, because if you're interested in anything that has to do with hemp, that has to do with the cannabis plant, otherwise known as quote unquote marijuana, even though that's not really we don't really consider that to be the true or accurate term. It's actually cannabis. But that's a big, huge topic. In CBD oil and everything that someone would actually need to know before purchasing a great CBD product and how to use it. And I think they have cracked a code in how they're creating their CBD products. I've used their products many times, and it is the single best product that I've ever personally used. I will go and shamelessly promote it with no direct association or reward on my end. I just think this is an amazing product and an amazing human being to deliver the message to the world. And at the moment, that's each one of you listening to this. So without further ado, I want to jump right into this. I'm going to introduce you to my good friend and colleague, William Kleidon. Enjoy. Will Kleidon was born and raised in Menlo Park, California. As a young child, his passion and intuition for using plants to heal people was seeded. He loved plants and plants loved him. When a friend fell off the monkey bars at preschool, Will instinctively grabbed a plant and rubbed it on his friend's arms. It eased the rash and his friend stopped crying. At 16, Will realized that humans were headed down a path that wouldn't end very well for them or the planet and the fellow members of life. He began to study patterns in nature and was determined to help humanity walk a path towards harmonious living with all of life. Will produced sustainable festivals at 17 with over 25 organizations. Following his intuition and passion for helping people and the planet, he was guided to the land in Ojai, California, where he and his partner Carolyn found a plot of land to care for. They have planted 100 trees and are organically building back the topsoil. They are making plans for workshops on permaculture and holistic health. Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you on, Will.
Epic. Equally here, bro.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure to have you right in front of me. We bumped into each other yesterday. You told me you were in town from Ojai, and once we got together and got into our conversation, I knew that I just had to get you on here. I knew there was magic to be had out of this.
Same here, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, man. And you've been involved, obviously, from reading your bio, you've been involved deeply into permaculture, farming, soil education, plant diversity, life sustainability, and also what we're going to talk about, hemp, like your passion for the plant of hemp, all the things that we can do with hemp as a material, replacement to petroleum and fossil fuel, and also the medicinal effects of the nutrition of the hemp seed, but also the CBD, which is extremely important, something I am passionate about, but you're the one who actually chose to go down the rabbit hole. So you're actually the perfect person to bring on to talk about the science, the therapeutic potential, and also the research, what CBD is, what the energy of it is, why it's here on the planet right now. I mean, we're going to go deep into that.
Epic.
So, but before we do, let's get a deeper look at who you are. Just like what got you into walking this path. Yeah.
Well, I guess I found the path as the path found me.
Right.
It's I experienced a fair amount of suffering and challenges as a kid at a very early age and throughout early childhood, and that was a blessing in that it broke my heart open and enabled me to see beyond just the material plane, as well as hold like deep compassion for others. So I had a choice, and I chose love, and I'm glad I did.
And so I guess
that led me,
that awakening of compassion oftentimes leads us into making better choices for our life, for our health, for our relationships, maybe what we want to do professionally.
Yep.
Right. So that's what I'm gathering.
Yeah, exactly. It led me to. I've always been fascinated in patterns and questioning and seeking in a way of like what there's. I had that sense there's more to life than what we've been taught and what we were told in our Western culture, and so questioning that, going through that suffering enabled me to see, okay, well, what's the root of that? Where's that coming from? Where's the sickness? Because that's clearly not our nature. Our nature is health and love. Like that's our first breath on the planet is a gift, and like we're imprinted with that. And I just found out recently that anandamide, which is one of our body's internal cannabinoids, is one of the first chemicals we get hit with as a life form. So, and anandamide's named after Ananda, the Sanskrit word for bliss. And so the first imprint of our body is built around the endocannabinoid system and of bliss. So how did we veer off that path? Like what's the benefits and questioning that led me to searching and looking for patterns and led me to see that there's a lot more going on than what we were taught. And so that kind of passion of helping people heal and feel better and come back to balance and discovering why and the nuances, that's where I am now. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Actually, what just came up in my mind as I hear you round that thought out is that this idea of I've been at odds, and it's probably no surprise to anyone listening that for some time I've been at odds with pharmaceutical consciousness. And I've looked very deeply at the nature of this consciousness, and you look into the Hermetic text and the alchemical text and the more obscure originations of chemistry that we call alchemy. And it's kind of this pattern of consciousness, or the duality of it, continues to show up in these different archetypes, and where we're at now, where I look at pharmaceuticals as really bad alchemy, the same way an herbalist would think of pharmaceuticals as really bad herbalism, right? It's kind of an interesting thing. So like what I'm thinking about is,
and it's not always right. But when used as a whole, as a blanket, then it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny to me when I think psychologically, is that if we're unaware of the potential that we hold inside of us, we don't have the awareness of all the different options, and we don't actually believe something new is possible for us, we will be dragged into a pharmaceutical-like consciousness of immediate gratification, immediate results, meaning that what I have in front of me is the extent of what's possible. But if you actually open up and your heart opens up to compassion, you start to exercise more, your behaviors change. Like you think like, okay, well, maybe I can use plants as a way to heal myself. Maybe I can change my diet. Maybe I can change my relationships. I can change what I'm doing in my life because it doesn't bring me into harmony, right? That's like the behavior of someone that opens up and believes that there's actually more possible. Therefore, they start to walk towards that possibility. But again, if they don't think it's possible, they're going to walk up to whatever shows up in front of them, that prescription or a cure to what ails them in the moment. So, in reference to what you're sharing, that's just the insight that came up through me, because it's a very deep one. And I think it's one that we oftentimes are in a state of inner civil war.
Yeah.
We're in conflict with ourselves because we're teeter-tottering between that immediate reference of what's possible and the expanded awareness of what could be possible if we walk in a different direction.
Yes. Yep. And exactly. And the beauty of what my passion is now regarding the endocannabinoid system is that it helps us do just that. It balances the Civil War in a sense of if we're in a state of drought, and then the immediate solution of getting that water right then is going to be so much more appealing than planning. All right, well, I could build a catchment system and sink these and do filtration through the reeds, right? And you don't give a shit about that. You want that water, so you're going to get it because that's where when we're in that state of extreme lack of energy, things become more simple solution based as opposed to long-term planning. And so the endocannabinoid system's function is to keep homeostasis in the whole entire body and consciousness. And so, and that's the beauty of to me, which led that path of wanting to find balance and harmony. And music is a big passion of mine. And like how you say with the endocrine system being a symphony, life is a symphony too, right? And the endocannabinoid system is kind of the conductor in a way. It guides and makes sure everything is on the levels that they need to be on, and keeps it balanced. And so when we have a healthy endocannabinoid system, then we can choose. All right, there's a choice. There's a pause. There's a buffer of immediacy where it can say, all right, I can go for that short-term gratification, or I've got enough energy, momentum, inertia, and balance to choose a more complex but system-designed option that is a greater investment and gives a better ROI return. The return on investment is much greater by choosing something instead of just the pharmaceutical instant gratification fixed system. And in certain cases, it's great. You have a flat tire. All right, let's put the spare tire on, but I'm not going to drive around with a spare tire for the rest of my life. I'm going to get out of the freeway, then fix the tire. And then so the endocannabinoid system helps us do just that, is navigate both realms and balance it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that example because, it's not either or, but there is practicality, there's intentionality, there is looking at things as a tactician, like a chess player. Yep. It's like if your face is pressed up against the chessboard, you can only see the pawn. You don't want to be a pawn in life, so you got to be able to back up a little bit to see the bishop and the king and the queen, to even know that's there and to know that you can move towards that. But if you get wounded or something, then the solution needs to be more immediate. And also, once you've patched up your wound, you can't keep picking at it with the same medication prescriptions tools, right? You actually have to change the course in order to create what you want to create. So what is beautiful about how we're bridging this concept right now, and what really people are listening, you're going to get what the totality of where this is going when we talk about this idea surrounding, as you said, the endocannabinoid system, which is, I guess I look at it like a transsulfurase of like the sulfur metabolism, what allows sulfur to create methylation in the body. It's a chain of processes of conversion points, right? So the endocannabinoid system, in my mind, is essentially your CBD metabolism, your cannabinoid metabolism to some extent. And we can refine that thought a little bit more, there's obviously, there's more there to it, and that's what we're going to go into. But I think I just wanted to bridge that conversation we just had, because essentially what you're telling me is that when you have the right chemicals, constituents in the receptor sites of the body, you're fully nourished, you're fully nutrified, you become a more balanced and harmonious human being, where you're not in a fight or flight. Precisely. You're not in fear. You're not in a state that is squandering that expanded possibility. Precisely. Right? Precisely.
Because when we're limited energy, lower energy, you've got less choices. And fear is the lowest of the energy choices. And as you move up that energy complexity, all of a sudden it begins to diversify in your options. And it's the same as putting fuel in the tank. You get more energy in the endocannabinoid system, and it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, generates neurogenesis in the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. It literally gives you new physical neurons in the brain to expand out of the amygdala and into these other maps of realms of possibility and choice beyond just the 4 Fs, fight, flight, fuck, and fear. And fear. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Pardon my language, but and so that is precisely you put more energy in the realms of possibility, expand way beyond the fight or flight. And it does so on a chemical and literally physical level of neurogenesis and tonification of the nervous system. And then also the mental and the emotional states that come along with that.
Okay, let me pause right there. So again, for everyone listening, and we're going to continue to unpack this. We're going on a train of thought here. That's kind of deep, but we're lining it up. Okay, so what my interpretation is when I first met you, I had one, pictorial judgments, nothing that I held on to, but things that flashed across my mind. I'm like, oh, he's kind of hippie. Oh, he has dreadlocks. Oh, this, that, and the other, right? Like these things that just came up. But luckily that didn't influence my ability to communicate with you and get a real understanding of who you are. And one thing struck me about talking to you is that you're hyper intelligent. And I don't mean to stroke your ego. I mean like neurologically, physiologically, there's something right about your circuitry. You're wired and you're myelinated in a way where the circuitry is firing sequentially the way that we would all like to have, like clarity of mind. You're able to put words together very clearly. So I'm sharing that to make a point that what you're talking about lines up perfectly with what your passion is. And I think I remember at Revolution, I asked you a question along the lines of, when you started taking CBD, did you feel cognitively, neurologically, did you feel like you felt sharper, like things were clicking for you?
Yep. And no doubt, it's the best nootropic on the planet, in my opinion.
Yeah. So the point I'm making there too, to elaborate further, I want to get like a reference, like, So within that question, what are some of those benefits?
So improved recovery time, mental fog dissipating, just massive ability to adapt to lineate different neural networks. So being able to change and pivot and follow a train of thoughts and then bring it back around into the collective guiding holistic network, as opposed to getting lost off on tangentials. So like when you've got the endocannabinoid system up, you can move faster and you can come back and you can see that greater map, because it's the master system of the entire body. So it maps and grounds you. So that on that front, massive increase of that. And then it's the best calming agent on the planet. And so if most of the time if we're experiencing anxiety, it's a force in our body to tell us to slow down or change something. And typically it's a fixed action program. So in some past state, some trauma happened. We wrote a neural network. The anxiety told us, all right, be less confident in this moment so you don't get hurt. And then it worked. And so you recorded it. And then it just says, the unconscious, no one's home. So it just goes, all right, I get a stimuli, I hear a sound, I'm always going to play that track. And it doesn't work for us. That's when we have problems, right? And so and it's part of the cosmic joke is that,
and we're trying to, and oftentimes those very things you pointed out, those fixed patterns or mental loops that have been reinforced and ingrained into our physical neurological system as a direct an immediate response to some kind of circumstance that repeats, right? So it causes that anxiety, and a lot of times,
and we only push record in the unconscious under extreme traumatic events, right? Or horrifically intense competition, like warfare, battle, gladiators. Those were when our ancestors would have, and it served us when we were walking and we had a saber-toothed tiger, and you heard a rustle, you heard a noise in the bush, you felt anxiety, you got that pump of adrenaline, you shot away, you moved away, you were fine, you lived, you saw the tiger, and your unconscious goes, all right, anytime I hear that sound in the bush, I'm going to get that flood of adrenaline. And for when our lifespan, when there was way more danger, way less society, way more shorter lifespan, it made sense to have the unconscious push record for traumas. But the problem with that is that every single time you hear a sound in the bush, cognitively, you can be like, all right, I know there's no more saber-toothed tigers because they're extinct, right? But the unconscious doesn't. There's no one home. It's unconscious. So it does. So you hear the sound, even though you consciously know you don't need to do that. It's going to override you, and it's going to give you that result. And so it served us at a point, but now it's actually it ends up causing us most of our trauma, our struggles. And
we try to go into the psychological realm, oftentimes by willpower, to rewrite and reprogram the system. But there's certain, and this has been my whole thing about nutrition and how raw food and superfoods and herbs have influenced me on that level, is that I was able to, once all that stuff got cleared out of me and I got everything I needed, the body alkalized, the blood cleansed, etc., I was able to more gracefully and with more awareness go into those states and start rewriting the program. And to even a further degree, because we're talking about the effects of CBD, as essentially what I'm seeing here is that this is a quote-unquote supplement or substance, if you will, that really bridges all that personal development information that's so important, but there's been that missing element to actually anchor it in.
Precisely. It's the missing link for thriving as modern humans, because our endocannabinoid, we never adapted to the internet, Wi-Fi, petrochemicals, synthetics, GMOs, the plethora, no matter where you see it, the plethora of data and stress inputs has exponentially increased. And the system designed to buffer and keep everything in balance could not have and did not physically evolve in time to match the exponential curve of where we're at. And so
it was such a drastic, the Industrial Revolution was such a drastic shift. Precisely.
And petroleum was the accelerant on the external. And what now there's a great beauty to it in the art is that hemp and the endocannabinoid system and the CBD or the cannabidiol, basically it takes the governor of our body's system that destroys our internal cannabinoid, anandamide and 2-AG. There's two that we're aware of, probably a lot more. We're just really scratching the surface in terms of understanding of the system. But the CBD basically lowers that governor and boosts the concentrations of the anandamide in our blood. So it brings us and enables us to match the way petroleum skyrocketed us. The CBD is the most important nutrient you can take as a modern human to boost our anandamide levels to match that level on the curve and bring us back to be able to handle and thrive and function the way that we're designed to function. It's fuel.
So this
it brings everything together, like you said.
This is why this conversation is so important on this subject alone, because most of what we hear about in relation to therapeutic hemp or CBD specifically, THC oil, and for that matter, is that we always hear about it in relation to cancer, to a physical disease, which is all totally valid. But I've been asking different questions because I get that, but I also know underneath all cancer and all physical manifestations, especially to that severity and also how common that specific disease is, that there's underlining root metaphysical, emotional, and psychological roots that anchor that physical protrusion, being a tumor in the body. It's not that of itself that's the issue. It's these very deeply wound root connections.
Exactly.
And so I've been wanting to come at this for some time from that perspective that what you're sharing is actually, this is to optimize your human experience. And therefore, if that's the case, the curing of said disability would be a byproduct of that overall kind of
imbalance.
That directive. If CBD, as one of many things,
it's part of it.
Its energy, its archetype, if you will, is to bring the human experience into more homeostasis and amplify the human experience. If you have a quote unquote disease, it will help to bring that back into balance.
And keep you in balance.
Thank you.
That's the design. And of course it's simple. There's a system that runs every system of the body, and we discovered it in 1980, rediscovered it and put a name on it. But the endocannabinoid system, there's a reason why hemp is there's a fair number of solid data theories showing that cannabis is one of the first domesticated plants, if not the first. We've evolved with it. It's an ally plant. It's provided us shelter, food, fuel, medicine, nutrients. Our entire for a big chunk of thousands of years throughout our evolutionary journey, and especially in the agricultural era. And so
it's kind of like a Faustian bargain. Right. Like the way it's flipped over, the very thing that was sacred, it's kind of like cacao, right? Yep. The very thing that was revered, sacred, and respected somehow got turned into a drug or a candy bar or this. And there's
a beauty to that, too.
And there's a beauty, but it's kind of a full circle of where we are now.
And it follows that pattern and metaphor of bringing things back into homeostasis and balance.
There you go. Wow.
And that's what it does. I mean, it literally, the endocannabinoid system makes sure your entire body, and that includes your mind and your spirit, if we get into the metaphysical levels, can handle the higher frequencies of evolution while staying in balance. Just like the phi in nature, the golden spiral or the golden mean, enables a ram's horns to grow in a way that it can expand and grow, but it keeps the center of balance constant. So it doesn't, when it grows, it doesn't flop over. Same with nautilus shells. It's a similar system of the body that we have, the endocannabinoid system, keeps us, as we grow and expand in consciousness and mapped out in complexity, keeping us balanced so we can grow without losing our center. So it's the system that makes sure it's the governor, it's the holistic balance for every other system. And so when it's depleted, and we're not producing enough internally to keep it up online, then we start experiencing life and going out of balance and have these other things and get out of ease or dis-ease. But when we refuel the tank and then it kicks back in, everything starts to come back into balance, and then it stays there. And that's the beauty. And that's coupled with, so you've got receptors in your fascia, in your brains, in your organs, all of your nervous system, digestive tract, reproductive system, respiratory system, and so where I'm going is it's not just having a healthy endocannabinoid fuel in the tank. It's great, but you also have to drive your car and your vehicle and play with it and nourish it in other ways, right? It's not It's not a silver bullet, but in many ways it is in some.
It's like a potentiator.
It is. Right? It's a catalyst, and it's I consider it the bridge molecule.
Okay.
It's the molecule that bridges everything together, that keeps everything grounded. It gets us in our bodies and simultaneously activates our. It literally creates neurogenesis, new neurons in the corpus callosum. So it bridges the left and the right hemispheres, left and right paradigms. We're in this mass. You look at the industrialized era, right? There was this huge increase of globalization and expansion and energy and all this. And just like a caterpillar is starting to cocoon itself, chrysalis, it's starting to break down old systems, and it has just amassed all of this energy in kind of a parasitic way. And then it needs to come into form, into balance, and the imaginal cells recode it, and there's a frequency in that's carrying a whole new force. And initially it gets killed off, but they keep persisting. And I consider CBD like the bridge molecule, the fuel to the imaginal cells of society that we're undergoing right now, because now more than ever before we have multiple cultures. We all realize we're all one. We have more than enough resources, technology, capabilities of feeding and clothing and the entire planet, using hemp as a replacement for petroleum in a fully it's a weed. It grows so easily. It grows pretty much anywhere, and it can create concrete that's bulletproof, waterproof, fireproof, mold-proof, carbon net, so it sinks carbon dioxide and it naturally cleans the airs. And that's the byproduct of our company's products, is to where we can create printable 3D printing plastics and houses out of the byproducts. And then you grow it and it remediates the toxic soils. Obviously, you never use that hemp grown or cannabis grown. And cannabis is hemp. It's the same thing. It's a man-made definition saying draw an arbitrary line.
Marijuana is not a real definition of cannabis.
No, it's a derogatory term that was used by Edward Bernays and Aslinger and William Randolph Hearst. And the reason that it became illegal in the U.S. is because in 1936, the U.S. Department of Agriculture figured out a way to make paper out of hemp equally as efficiently and as lumber. And they could 1 acre, and this is still true today, it hasn't changed, 1 acre of hemp is the equivalent of 6 acres of old-growth forest for lumber. And it's a weed. So, of course, everyone would want to use hemp. And everyone was hemp-friendly at that point. They didn't have an efficient – lumber was more efficient, but then – and so he went, fuck, my industry's going to be shut out. He owned all the newspapers. He put out a massive propaganda campaign, used divisiveness of racism, saying that the Latinos and the African-Americans were drug users and using it. And so there was already sentiment and hatred of fear from just –
conservatives.
Well, yeah, just fear and humanity of ignorance and or opportunities for growth and awareness, right? Yeah.
I just showed him the phone. It's 444. I just wanted to put that out there.
I love it. Exactly. And so synchronicities increase when you take CBD massively. That's another point because the flow state increases. So there's a lack of flow at that point. Anyways, campaign genius worked. They spread it. All of a sudden demonized the plant that the Constitution and used to be required by law to grow. And we can get into the issues of colonialism and this later. But anyways, that's what made it illegal. And now it's coming full circle. And had it not become illegal, it would have, just like any other major important plant, with the psychosis of society at that time, it would have been usurped slowly. The rights of it would have been patented. It would be under the hands of all the major pharmaceutical industries and patented. And the genetically modified Terminator hemp, which does exist, but no one will accept it and will ever accept, because no one would want that because of the culture around it. But had that not have happened, people would have been accepting it most likely. And so there was a genius to the plant's consciousness to pull herself underground, move out in the root mass of the underground, and it's always been the plant of the people and the masses. And then it pulled itself back to that and has now emerged in the mainstream consciousness because of the internet. It cannot be usurped. It cannot be taken away again, because people would not allow it. And so that brilliancy of now it's emerging again from the underground, and it's staying in the hands of the people because its very nature is to bring synergy and homeostasis to help everyone, because that one group is in a psychosis and the masses are awakening rapidly and have awakened, and now we're bringing it back to balance. So it's this beautiful harmonic. Her nature is so divine, and that's the beauty of it. It's bringing homeostasis back to society again.
It reminds me of that quote: in order to heal the whole, you have to first heal your soul.
Yes.
And it's that idea of the inner world reflects, or the outer world reflects the inner world. That's very esoteric, and it at some level doesn't even make sense. If you're thinking from the mind perspective, right. Like 1, Purely. 2, 3, 4, 5,
yep.
But then you do the Fibonacci sequence, and then you have more of an expanded view. But anyways, that you brought it full circle to that point is that, well, I don't even want to go into the archetypical nature of it. I think that's pretty obvious. But really what I love about you're sharing a different perspective of this, that really, when you hear it like that, it makes sense. You're like, oh, wow, okay, geez, I didn't know it was that deep and profound. And now it makes sense scientifically, looking at how this affects the body and it's like a modulator for the human, vehicle.
Yes.
And the reason we're so taken off balance from that, and we're in a dystopic and really an imbalanced state in our body, and the stress response is God, where am I going with that? It's like there's a thought I want to bridge here. It's
we've been depleted in our endocannabinoid system.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean it's just something that's so deep, and I'm kind of reaching, but I think the point is that this is something that the time is now, and the information is out, and now this is an option that is available to everyone in combination with their healthy lifestyle choices, right? Precisely.
Mm-hmm. And it encourages it, because if I've found that my health and is the true wealth, and since feeding my endocannabinoid system, I've been taking it every day for pretty much every day. There's some points where your body will cycle in and out, for about 2 years now, and when you're a lot of the time, especially people who are ready, because the brilliance of it is it's going to deliver it and do whatever is needed in that sequence for optimizing your homeostasis first. So some people, it might go into their fascia and begin to strengthen and optimize the fascia of that person's body, and another person, it might go straight into the brain and increase neurogenesis in the hippocampus, because at 25 we stop really creating neurogenesis unless we are really doing things right. But even then, there's still a limited push. We can do everything right, but without the endocannabinoid system being up online, everything we do is firing okay, but it's not at the optimal level for the environment that we're in. And so this basically levels us up. So then all of the other choices start to synergize and really maximize. And so people, when they take it, some people will go, whoa, I feel like I want to go ride my bike and go on, do a run. And you do. And you run better. And you perform like your recovery time is faster. And you'll notice that your twitch fibers are way better. Your martial arts become better if you do martial arts. Your qigong, everything starts to work better, notably. And so then when you feel good again and you're not feeling like you're running on empty, you're going to want to drive that vehicle better. You want to push it more, and so it opens up the channels to do all the other stuff more because you feel good.
Yes. Absolutely.
So it's that bridge.
Yeah. No, and that's so beautifully articulated, and really that's the crux of it all, is that we want to feel better. So that's essentially why we would go to the pharmaceuticals in the first place, is because our genuine desire is to feel better.
It's homeostasis. We want balance.
So that's why we do something. So when you know why you do something, you're not as self-judgmental about it. You just like, okay, well, if there's a new option out there, then let me do that. Because that probably is going to it's going to allow me to feel better more consistently and for longer.
Yes.
And so with that said,
and that option of knowing it's out there and knowing, like, that's the biggest part right now, is to let us, like, we got to educate and continue to learn. We're learning so much and we know so little. And it's so much more than just CBD, because there's, people are saying, okay, there's people putting out basically the pharmaceutical version.
Let's talk about this aspect. Now everyone's super into this conversation. Let's talk about the difference in products, quality, anything in that world that we need to help bridge people to get in the door.
Yeah. So it's an epic question. A few things. One is CBD is amazing. It's kind of the superstar in a way, but it's really not the end all be all. You need a full spectrum of the plant, and CBD cannabidiol tends to do the most in many ways. Yet it needs its other partners and synergy for it to really do what it does in the body. And so there's been some people putting out isolated crystallate versions, and so it's they basically just got the crystallate. They've eliminated all of the energy of the plant. It's just like the pharmaceuticals would. They've stripped it down and think, oh, it's just this one thing. That must be the solution. We'll just focus on that. And if you notice in life, there's never one thing that does everything. You get your healthy endocannabinoid system up online. That's great, but you still need to go out and do stuff and drink water and hydrate and have a healthy diet. And you have to live, right? So, and it's that same philosophy of thinking, oh, okay, well, it's just got to be one thing. And so these pure 99% CBD, that sounds great, except it doesn't work in the body.
Except it doesn't. Okay, wow.
It just doesn't.
Okay.
You need to take way more, and the benefits are way less. So one, make sure that that it's a full spectrum extract is vital, and you need some THC in it for uptake. And brilliant doctor in Israel discovered this. They called it the entourage effect, and so you need all of these cannabinoids and nutrients in there for it to really be optimized. So, that's another element is making sure that it's a full spectrum, and then also know your sourcing. And so the sourcing there's a lot of, at the beginning, when this movement kind of started, there were people getting it from the byproduct of industrial grown hemp that was grown in China that has high heavy metals in it. And so it was great. The brilliant part of the plant is that it will remediate soils. The bad part is you never accumulates it, and you never want to have that as your intake for a nutrient source.
Right.
So that was one problem. So always make sure that it's tested by a third party, not in-house, because there's ethical concerns with that, and it's just better to have someone else check it. And
you might have missed something.
Precisely. So third party per batch testing is really important. So and testing it for heavy metals, VOCs, microbes, and then terpenes and cannabinoids, because you want to make sure that there's a standard. And if you're taking it and you have a particular regimen for dosage, you want to make sure that product is consistent and you know what's actually in your product that you're putting in your body every time. So that's something that we make sure to do. We're the first company to do that and really post them like every single time. And more and more companies are starting to do that, which is awesome. So those are really important elements. Not all are the same, and especially the crystallates don't work. And make sure that it's tested and that it's an extract that's not made with heavy solvents. And then another thing is like, what are the carriers for the
That's
product?
what I was about to ask you that, because when I first met you and I saw your product, one thing that I looked at the ingredients and it caught my eye. I used acerola cherry, and I was like, oh, he knows something. He knows something about vitamin C and its interaction with CBD. And I was like, oh, well, what's that about, right?
Yep. And so it definitely boosts the uptake and synergy, and most people tend to be depleted. And so I wanted to formulate a product that, one, the plants talked to me about, and I downloaded the dosage of like putting in the moringa and the acerola cherry for just a holistic balance and synergy and alchemy of the plants. And getting those nutrients and minerals and the vitamin C will help the uptake for the system. Definitely penetrate. And that's another big piece is bioavailability. So like cannabinoids are fat soluble compounds. So once they're in the body, it's great. They can dance around your body and move wherever they want and as they need to. However, getting them into the blood is the issue. So regular CBD oil, if you put it sublingual, you've still got the mucal membrane and you've got your saliva, and it's like trying to pour oil and water and get it to go through this, and the water is the gatekeeper of your mouth, and so it's really inefficient. You're not going to get much sublingual with a fully oil-based compound, and you end up swallowing it mostly. And so then once it's in your gut and you're eating it, around 90% of them are destroyed before they make it into the blood. So you eat 20 milligrams, you're really only getting 2 milligrams of CBD in your body. So it's not an efficient bioavailability normally, and that's why people tend to smoke it. Is much faster. However, there's disadvantages to that. So that people are aware of. So what we did is we actually went to improve the bioavailability. We've got a patent pending global process that basically encapsulates it in micro bubbles of water. Using only certified organic ingredients, and the process is we're not chemically tweaking it, and we're not using synthetic compounds to do this. And so we're keeping it the way nature intended in a way, and then innovating it. So that's alchemy, right? And so this way, your body, when you put it in your mouth, it actually absorbs it instantly as if it's water, and then it diffuses. And so it's got at least a 10x bioavailability. We're going to do the pharmacokinetics soon. But just based on the chemistry, when you take a fat-soluble compound, make it water-soluble, you get a 10x. And this is one step further than that because it's actually encapsulated in water. So it's at least a 10x. So the 250 milligrams in our super CBD is the equivalent of 2,500 milligrams at least of a regular CBD product. So you're getting way more efficiency and cost-effectiveness for the product. And it's got the benefit of that. It acts instantly. And so we have the only product that you will feel the benefits in a minute versus a regular CBD takes 30 minutes.
There's all kinds of variables within that 30-minute gap.
Yeah, depending on the person's age. On average.
That's what I mean. Yeah, like it's not a, you can't just even.
Some people take even longer.
Right.
No.
Right.
And some people faster. But definitely not a minute for anyone other than with our products. And there's the benefit to that is that you know what you're getting right away, so you don't have to like. A lot of times, people's complaints with edibles for high THC, but CBD and
that's an important point too, to point out, because oftentimes people will still say like, well, it gets me high, or
no,
I don't want something that's psychoactive, precisely, or that's going to have a certain level of THC because they have a job or whatever the case is.
Yep. And so ours is 0.03%, so it's enough for there to be the entourage effect, but the legal definition of hemp is 0.3, which is an arbitrarily set number by a Canadian botanist who said this is a random number, but I'm going to say this is hemp, and anything above 0.3 is cannabis. And so it's really the same plant in many ways. And we can get into there's differences, but the 0.3, ours is 0.03. There's enough for the entourage effect, and there's absolutely no psychoactivity, because the way the THC works is it targets the CB1 receptors of the endocannabinoid system. We know of two, and there's probably more. So there's CB1 and there's CB2. And anandamide tends to have an affinity to CB1, and 2-AG is to CB2. The THC competes with anandamide, and as modern humans, we already don't have enough anandamide to really handle the environment. We don't have enough fuel in our tank, so to speak. And so when you're competing with it, and it's binding to the CB1, it's actually blocking the anandamide from hitting the CB1 receptors and working its homeostasis magic in the body. And so it's throwing you slightly out of homeostasis, and it can help people that way. And there's a lot of benefits to THC for certain individuals and modulating and things. However, you don't want your endocannabinoid system and homeostasis to be slightly tweaked. And what the CBD does is it actually increases the level of anandamide in your blood. So it's not a direct agonist on the system. It actually indirectly synergizes with your body's own process and boosts the anandamide levels by which causes the THC it counteracts the psychoactivity because the anandamide's taking the space for that receptor. So it counteracts the psychoactivity of THC and increases your body's homeostasis as opposed to slightly throws it off.
Okay,
that's a big.
I want to keep this going, but I got to get this thought out.
Yeah, please.
You're probably looking at me as I'm sitting here, just like it's all downloading right now. Some pieces are being put together for me. I'm thinking of 3 different forms of THC.
Yep.
There's the tetrahydrocannabidiol, which is the
Delta 9. Yep.
Right, exactly. The THC in cannabis. Then there's also tetrahydrocurcuminoid, which is found in turmeric. Yep. And then there's tetrahydrocarbinol, which is found in cacao. Yeah. Now that molecule is interesting because it somehow influences the monoamine oxidase inhibition that has been theorized to be a part of cacao.
Oh, that's brilliant.
But now that they're finding that's the chemical that somehow is influenced in that process, right?
So it's an indirect MAOI.
I don't know. I just know that that's we've had that idea of cacao that it's a
MAOI. And I've been talking with our chemists. I'm like, how is it an MAOI?
Exactly.
Like, I don't know.
And so so that's been largely a theory, but now through this understanding of that form of THC, it works on that principle, and that's basically the principle that antidepressants, SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, are working on, but it's obviously in a pharmaceutical chemicalized model, right? Yep. So there's a lot of references in clinical research in the relationship of cacao and mood elevation. Yes. So what I'm getting at...
And that's anandamide.
That's anandamide. Thank you. Exactly. Yep. That's coming full circle. Yep. And then I'm also thinking of turmeric because turmeric is neurogenic. Oh, yeah. It increases the synaptogenesis and the neurogenesis, the regeneration of neurons like you've been talking about. Yep. So this train of thought is converging now where there's something about these THC-based molecules that originally you think, okay, that's just in cannabis, right? But it's like, oh, well, there's different forms. And the point of this is that somehow those are direct precursors or potentiators to neurological empowerment.
Yes. Yeah.
And so the last part of that, I'm bringing this somewhere. The last part of that is that those are all fat-soluble compounds.
Yes.
And they all somehow can synergize together.
Yes.
Because we do know the effects for people that have had like pop brownies, or when you mix CBD oil with cacao, there is some kind of synergistic effect there.
Yeah, and and that's because the for CBD and cacao, the cacao's got one piece of it is the THC is going to be different because it's not going to target the CB1 most likely, but it's similar enough that it's going to be able to be harmonized and then probably do an indirect. And I think indirect is the best for the body. This is my theory.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that's not
like a
always
non-specific
true.
reaction. That's what an adaptogen is,
Precisely.
right? It's a non-specific reaction.
It's going to be able to be used for what it needs to be, as opposed to saying the pharmaceutical approach is you've got this X symptom, let's cut that symptom off. And then what you just did is, okay, well, the body's very complex. So if you throw that off, it might throw something else off. And so for something that can go into the body and then be utilized how the body needs it, and the endocannabinoid system is designed is to say, let's bring all of these systems together and then utilize them how they need to be utilized in nutrients. And so that it optimizes all of the THCs and the way the CBD works is it increases it stops the body from destroying the anandamide. And so since we're all depleted in anandamide, it's going to always decrease the FAAH that's going to pull it up. And I would be fascinated to see someone who's got super high levels of anandamide and then test to see what does the CBD do on the FAH, if it actually governs it, which it most likely will do.
Like a modulator.
It's an immunomodulator. It's glycemic modulator. It modulates everything for every system. So following the patterns of nature and Occam's razor, it's probably going to be the same thing, right?
Whatever the simplest option is, that's probably the right one.
What it's doing. Exactly. So the CBD with cacao is it's got anandamide, so you put them together and then you've just got an extra blissful boost. And then same with turmeric is for the inflammation, and you synergize them together. We're going to come out with like a gel cap with MSM and non-petroleum based.
Yes.
So for the sulfurs, pine, and anyways,
that's profound. Now that means a lot to me hearing it, because I've spent years piecing these different elements together, and now holographically the constellate is coming together where I'm like, oh wait, does that have anything to do with this? Because it seems to line up. It seems to make sense to me. Like somehow my mind has mapped that together for some reason, and I'm pretty sure that experience of seeing the constellation of these things is probably what most of the quote-unquote genius or scientists, they saw that image and then pieced it together and then put something together like you do with your product or doing the research, and then found that synergy together. And so your product, in my mind, is an evolution. It's an innovation of all the isolates and the things that you've laid out for us. Essentially, it's the next innovation of many.
Of many to come. And it's already like. I feel like the reason that happened is one is there's a lot of it has to do with intention and like this. I believe that plants have a spirit in them. There's a consciousness in them, and they're entities and awareness in themselves. And the nature of cannabis is for healing and for remediating soil and providing abundance for everyone. And it's for the people and it's for all of life. As opposed to, it's an adaptogen by its very nature. It's there to give and modulate. And the whole intention of the company, none of the CBD products that were out there was stuff I wanted to put in my body. It all had GMO corn-based glycerins or soy glycerins, potassium sorbates, and potassium sorbates. Not necessarily the worst thing in the world for you, but it's still not.
You didn't want it.
I don't like it. If you don't need it, don't do it, right? And so that's what inspired me to formulate something. And then the main vision was I want to create a vehicle, and the universe, I feel blessed with this opportunity to be able to birth this and steward this, is that this cosmic vehicle really came through. The whole intention is to create a catalyst of abundance for all of life and all life forms, and help us evolve into the next level of full abundance and harmony and synergy for everyone. And that's actually written into our core of the business. We're a benefit corporation, and so we're legally bound to holistically benefit all of life and the inhabitants of Earth and the Earth itself through all of our ventures, products, partnerships, and collaborations. And and that is why I feel like this we've been so blessed that all of these doors have opened, and we came through this alchemy and listening and meditation. This formula came through that is now like growing in awareness and is literally changing people's lives every day in massive ways. The formula of basically having something that's fully water soluble and is the fastest acting and most bioavailable, using only certified organic ingredients. We've totally disrupted the space. And then I feel like the plant gifted that in a way because it knew that we would use it for good, not just for a bottom line. Right. And so if people are really in need of it and they can't afford it, we guarantee access to them no matter what. And we're always looking to synergize and to give back, and we partner with different nonprofits and initiatives, and that was a bit of a flow on that.
No, I love it. It's beautiful. Thanks for painting that picture. I mean, I feel like that's probably the best place, if any, to conclude this conversation. I mean, geez, what a conversation. And again, I mean, for everyone listening, I've known Will for a little while now, and he just showed up on the island the other day and it's like, hey, I'm in town. And we met up and had this unbelievable conversation. And we're like, hey, we should probably get you on the show. And no one's ever talked about this, certainly not to the depth that you are capable of. It's like, wow, let's do this now. And by the way, for everyone, I think that's a little ode to the taking advantage of opportunities as they come to you, is that you got to seize the moment. You got to seize the day. And it's like this conversation would never have happened. Even if we scheduled to record it over the phone, this wouldn't have happened. I'm super grateful to be and to just allow that to happen with you.
Same. And the flow.
Yes. Yeah. And apparently that's what this whole conversation's about, is to increase your state of flow so you can flow more in your life.
Exactly. And the and the Flow Genome Project has found that people who are flow experts, they've done blood samples. What molecule is the prime molecule?
Anandamide. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And that's why they'll talk about, that's been my thing for years about cacao again, because before I knew about the Flow Genome Project, that was something that was very talked about. And the idea that now you told me there was a type of mushroom that has anandamide, which was news to me, but cacao was the only food that we knew of that had that anandamide chemical in it. So it's like, wow, that's one of the reasons that this is such a special food. Yeah, but then it's like, this just brings a whole new, And the CBD boosts it and lets our bodies actually take it in, because Right, you can't just eat like a bag of chocolate and then
the FAH destroys it, and that's because it got set just like the bring it back to the beginning of the conversation. The unconscious just sets it as a steady state, and so as a modulator, what it's going to come in and do is since we didn't adapt in time to all of the where we really need our anandamide levels to be, taking the CBD in will decrease that FAAH and then boost the anandamide and bring us back into flow and back into balance and harmony.
I see. That reminds me a lot of
no, go ahead. So, and you were talking about how going into exercise cleansing, raw foods, meditation practice enabled you to go into your unconscious and rewrite those neural networks. And the reason that worked is because you were boosting your endocannabinoid system. You were building your anandamide by getting into those states. And what that does is it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and it bridges the conscious mind with the unconscious. So again, CBD being the bridge molecule, and and so when you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, that's what enables you to rewrite the unconscious. Until that happens, you're yelling at a television to change the channel, and all it does is turns the volume up. And so now basically the CBD can be a catalyst for humanity, for the masses who aren't necessarily going to be as disciplined and have the path that you had to be able to dial that in.
Right. This
way it's going to enable them to accelerate that and lead them to this with your genius and wisdom, and bridge and activate the parasympathetic, rewrite the unconscious programs, and dial in the unconscious so that it's matching the conscious mind the way we want it to, which is a harmonic, abundant life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's so clear and obvious and so incredible. It's so amazing. Wow. Really incredible conversation. So everybody is wanting to know, if they did not see the link in the show notes, where do I get this product?
So we're online. We'll ship to all 45 countries worldwide. We're at Erewhon. We're the only product that's going to be in the tonic bar at Erewhon, where they love us.
Yes.
If you're in LA, we're going to be, during the first week that they're opening up at their Venice, they've called us and asked, they want us to be one of the first demos in the entire store.
Thank you, I used to work at Erewhon. I know those guys very well. Thank you for doing that. Wow.
Synchronicity.
What's your website?
www.ojainergetics.com.
Okay. And again, that's in the show notes. You can go right there. Beautiful website, easy to order. Get if you can, get 2 or 3. And I don't say that just to promote it. I mean that you want to actually have a realistic exploration with this. Just like anything that I see that's hyper innovative like this, and make a little bit of an investment. And if you have a family, this is something that you can give your developing child or your teenager or your husband or wife. Do it together, so you can all have the experience together, so we can create harmony.
Exactly. and for dosage, you want to take a little bit more at first, because it's got an inverse tolerance, and you want to prime the pump. And so you tend to take a higher dosage initially, and then after your system's running and the engine's going, then you can decrease it. So typically 2 dropperfuls for a relatively healthy person is the magic number.
Okay.
And then take it until you notice the result that you're looking for. But because it's soluble in water, if you hold it under your tongue and you wait for a minute, you should feel a notable increase of cognition, relaxation of the body, focus increases, eyes get more focused, and those are kind of the telltale markers for a healthy human, what they would notice. And then if you're not feeling anything, most likely you probably need a little bit, your endocannabinoid system is working a little harder, so you want to up it by a dropper full, and then wait a minute.
Droppers.
Then do it a minute at a time, because it's going to actually be in your blood and be past the blood-brain by a minute, so you'll notice it.
So each dropper, do 1 dropper, wait a minute, 1 dropper, wait a minute, like that.
Until you feel. And if you know how to muscle test it. That's the ideal, because it's a modulating system, so depending on your day, you might need more, might need less.
Okay. That's great. Thank you for the level of detail and direction on that. And there you go, everyone. Here's the deal. You have the information. The key has been given to you. You get to put in the door, turn the knob, and walk through the door and have an experience. And I mean that with all the podcasts that we do. The point of this is that you have a free and consistent resource, educational resource, where you can rewind. You can listen to this again. You have unlimited control. You can listen to this 100 times in a couple days if you wanted. That's not going to do anything to our bandwidth. It's not going to take away from anything. It's going to pour into you. Yeah. So take what you learn, take what resonates with you, and push the button. Take action, change your life. And thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the official Ronnie Landis Show. We will see you next time. Aloha.
Yeah, bro.